Okay, can we have a question over there?
Hi Neil, thank you for writing. My name is Piao Young. One of my favorite anecdotes involve two of my favorite comic book creators, yourself and Alan Moore. Could you tell us how you came to be known as Scary Trousers?
Okay. Alan Moore is, as you probably all know, a very, very big and hairy comics creator. And I was in Northampton. I'd gone up to see Alan. Alan rarely, occasionally I'll bump into him, he'll be in London and we'll see each other, but mostly, if you want to go to see Alan, you go to see Alan. You go up to Northampton. And we got out to dinner. Now, I have two different kinds of reaction to blood and gore and human innards and things like that. If I'm writing about it, I can get absolutely fascinated in a completely detached way, which is just enthusiastic. I remember calling my doctor and saying, I really need to talk to who does autopsies? What happens? And he said, I did autopsies for years. I said, great, talk me through them. And we're having this wonderful conversation because I'm writing American Gods and I need somebody to take somebody apart, and so I'm learning all about so you put this into the bucket, this you put on one side, and then he's going on, okay, and then you put everything back in the same order that you took them out. And I'm saying, why is it the same order? He said, well, if you try and change it, they won't fit. I go, oh, that's brilliant. So okay, and when exactly do the kidneys come out? I go, okay, good, you put that in the bucket, you took. And now what if it's really rotted down? Okay, good. So if I'm going to be using it, I am completely not squeamish. But I do have my squeamish side. And sometimes it takes me by surprise. I remember 20-something years ago when my daughter Holly, my wife, my ex-wife Mary, was pregnant with Holly, very pregnant. So we went down to pregnancy lesson sort of thing where a nice lady shows you, has a dummy of a baby and a dummy of a human pelvis, and you're saying, it comes through here and this and that and the other. And then sometimes, of course, it can get stuck here, and she's pulling at it, and this plastic baby's head fell off. And on the one hand, it's just a plastic pelvis and the baby the head was not meant to fall off. It was not like detachable head. This is the bit. She's pulling at it through she's got these forceps and ponk, the head comes off, which is not what's meant to happen. And I headed off I said, I'll be right back, and just went off to the toilets, sat down on the floor until the world started going round. Because somehow in my head that had turned into death of baby. So, that's giving you context. But that's maybe occurred, again, 3 times in the last 20, 30 years, something like that. So Alan Moore, we're having dinner. And Alan has just written the longest, goriest sequence in From Hell. And I'm saying, so what are you working on? And he's saying, well, Neil, I've just written this great bit. I've got William Gull, right? It's the death of Mary Kelly. It all takes place, it's like 50 pages long, and it all takes place in this one room. And first of all, he goes in, he cuts her up, he's killed her, and then, he's pulling out her kidney, and it's everything, he's... All right, then, he's cutting out, and then he goes into the sexual organs, and he's describing what Jack the Ripper did to Mary Kelly from the point of view of somebody who's there in the room that night. Alan giving it all he's got, and believe me, that man has descriptive ability beyond that of most people. And he gets up to the point of saying, And then he pulls out her lungs and he holds them up and he's dangling her lungs in front of Netley and he says, "Look, Netley, lights." And we're about 15 minutes into the removal of bits from Grace Kelly and from Mary Kelly. Grace Kelly, as far as I know, was buried intact. The ovaries have been removed, the kidneys are over here, the liver, and somehow the lungs just tipped me over the edge. And I said, "Alan, I'm going to go and sit outside on the pavement for a minute, if you don't mind." And I got up, and the world was swaying very gently, and I headed out to the pavement. And as I walked through the restaurant, I heard from behind me a voice saying, "Well, well, well, there goes Neil Scary Trousers Gaiman." So that is the story.
Thank you.
Okay, can we have maybe a question from the top? Anyone? Any question from the top? Just to give. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I've noticed you sprinkled some Miyazaki references in some of your literature. Was that your doing, or was that the artist, or was it a combination?
I think the Totoros that have crept into my literature in comics, there are several Totoros that you can find were all put in by the respective artists, by Charles Vess, by Jill Thompson, which is not to say that I wouldn't have done it if I'd thought of it, because I had the honor to work with Mr. Miyazaki on the English translation of Princess Mononoke, and about 18 months ago, I had one of that way you have every now and then you look back and you go, "That was one of the best days of my life," but you only realize it looking back. Going through, you're going, "I'm having an amazing day," and then you look back and you go, "That was one of the days." And about actually a year ago, because I would have gone through 2 years ago, 18 months ago ish, when Beowulf was going to be released in Japan, they flew me in. Stardust was going to be released in Japan. They flew me in, and I had a day off, one day off in my time there, and I contacted the guys, Steve Alpert from Studio Ghibli, who I'd met and worked with a lot on Mononoke, and I said, "Is there any chance that I could just come out and say hello? Come out to the Studio Ghibli studios?" And he said, "Of course, come on out." So I went out to Studio Ghibli. I was welcomed in, and I figured that somewhere in there I would probably get to say hello to Mr. Miyazaki if I was lucky and he was in. What I did not expect to happen was that Miyazaki was like the third person I met there, and just decided that really he should show me round, and then he should show me round the town and show me the children's centre that he's building, more or less by hand, and then take me to the little Studio Ghibli retreat, and we'd sit and talk about children's fiction and Diana Wynne Jones and things like that through an interpreter, which is what happened. So I got to spend an entire day with Mr. Miyazaki, and he showed me everything he was working on Ponyo, and explaining the whole thing to me, and all of his watercolor paintings, and it was just... And what made it an amazingly wonderful day was, as far as he is concerned, I don't think Mr. Miyazaki knows that I am anything other than the nice guy who translated Princess Mononoke for Americans, and that he didn't get anybody ever coming up to him and saying, that was a bad translation. It wasn't like he was doing this for a visiting celebrity, and he doesn't care about celebrity. He was doing it because we'd met and liked each other at the Lincoln Center, and he wanted to be a gracious host, and I had one of the most fantastic days of my life just with him. So there you go. So I absolutely would have put in those Totoros, but I didn't. It was the artists in each case.